Good afternoon, hello and welcome to today's session. So I'm back with live telecast as well as YouTube and MANATV telecast after a very long time. I hope you guys are doing well. Just to begin with a little background to what these sessions are going to be. So this is going to be a 10-day program on communication essentials, which I will take care of. And this program is organized by AP State Skill Development Corporation. Now, APSSDC, as we call it, has been the pioneer of skill development and skill education programs since 2015. I had been conducting a lot of sessions on MANATV since a year plus now. I interacted with a lot of students whenever I travel to certain places. Recently, in one of the program in Vijayawada, where the Honorable Chief Minister was a chief guest, I happened to meet a lot of students who had been following the APSSDC training programs, and what I gathered is these programs are extremely helpful and it helped you get a job. So that's the biggest reward. Trainers like me, Sunil, and a lot of other trainers who had been putting a lot of efforts to help you gain certain skills, certain knowledge, and that's the biggest reward for us. And this credit certainly goes to APSSDC and the principal consultant, Dr. Shailaja, who has been the pioneer of this program. So to begin with, today again I am going to start with communication essentials. As you know what communication is, I am going to talk about all these aspects soon. But in this particular session, I want to start with the introduction and overview as to why this is important. All right. So couple of things before we start. Number one, it's going to be a 10-day program. My sessions is going to be there are 2 slots in the afternoon, and the morning slots you will have Mr. Sunil, who is going to train you on aptitude, where he is going to speak about a lot of aspects in terms of aptitude, a lot of topics in reasoning and quantitative aptitude. And I'm going to take care of communication skills. Well, I will specifically speak about oral communication, the importance of oral communication, the aspects which you need to be good at. And I will also speak about certain aspects in terms of body language if time permits. All right. So please make the best of it. If you miss the live program, you can always go back and look for the recorded sessions on YouTube. You have a dedicated channel for MANATV. Just look for these programs and you will find a lot of trainings which has already been recorded and put up. So please make use of these training programs. And in case if you have any questions, you can always write on the comment section of YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can post your questions during the break time. I will take a look at these questions and I will answer. What I would appreciate is you asking questions so that I can help you with the answer. The second aspect is this entire delivery is going to be in English. Number one reason is I don't speak any other language. I don't speak Telugu, certainly. I'm not good at it. Number two, today the language has become extremely crucial in order to succeed. Now, having said that, the pride of your vernacular language remains intact. Even I love my vernacular language. I love my mother tongue. But having said that, you need to be well versed with a global language which people can communicate with you in. So these are the aspects I'm going to speak about in detail. All right. Now, before we start, I want to ask certain questions. I know I'm not going to get answers because it's a one-way interaction right now. So there's one crucial information which I want to have an interaction on. All right. So those who are watching this program right now, primarily this is designed for the first year and the second year graduation students, regardless you are from commerce, you are from science or arts, BA, BCom, BSc. In case you are from engineering, in case if you are for BBM, doesn't really matter. This is going to be relevant for all of you. So those who are watching these program, are you from academic background? There is one important question I want to ask you is, are you educated? Now you are going to answer, yes, I am educated. Now, on what basis do you say you are educated? Because you have acquired certain education, right? So we have something called education, and that happens when we say that, okay, we have completed a certain milestones in terms of our education. It could be matriculation, it could be intermediate, it could be graduation or post-graduation in any field. Once you finish, you get that certificate in your hand, the convocation certificate, and you call yourself educated. Now, when you are educated, can we have the slide please? I need the slides. Thank you. So, education is something which you acquire over a period of time. Now, does the education also guarantee what we call as knowledge? Now, what is the difference between education and knowledge? It's simple. Knowledge is something, being aware of something. For example, do you have a knowledge of how to work on an Excel? Do you have the knowledge of how to work on a Word document? Do you have the knowledge how to prepare a PowerPoint presentation? You have the knowledge, but you don't need a specific education or a degree in order to make these documents in MS Office. All right. So, knowledge simply means, are you aware of it? Education means there is a formal authentication, there is a formal certification that tells you that you have the knowledge. Now, just having the knowledge need not be through a formal document. Now, the question arises, what is skills? All right. Now, we have education, knowledge and skills. What do we mean by skills? Skills is having the knowledge on a very intense level. Skills is basically having the practical knowledge coupled with the theoretical knowledge. Let me give you an example. Before that, the question is, if a person is skilled, is it necessary the person is educated? Think and answer. If the person is skilled in a particular area, is it necessary the person is also educated? Number one. Number two, if the person is educated, is it necessary the person will have the skills? Next question, if a person has knowledge about something, is it necessary the person needs to be educated? Can we have the slide? I am talking about these three components. Thank you. So, first one I am talking about is education, I am talking about knowledge, I am talking about skills. Education is a formal authentication, certification that yes, you have completed certain milestone, which means if you are educated, you will have the knowledge. But is it necessary? Is it mandatory? I know people who have a degree, but they do not really know how to work on certain aspects. Skills means the art of doing something really well, perfectly well in practical scenario. All right. Now, using these three terms, education, knowledge and skills, let me ask you a quick question. You have a person, or imagine or take for example, you have a person who is educated because the person holds an Masters of Technology, M.Tech degree on mechanical engineering. Okay. So, this person is mechanical engineer, masters in mechanical engineering. Okay. Does it mean he has the knowledge of machines? Definitely yes, probably yes. Now, if I am using my car or if I am using my bike, suddenly it stops working, can this mechanical engineer, the masters in mechanical engineer, can he diagnose what the problem is and can he fix it? The answer is not very sure, 50-50. Maybe he can, maybe he cannot. Most of the cases he will say, sorry, I cannot because I am not a mechanic, I am an engineer, so I cannot fix it. Wherein the fact is, he is supposed to know how the engine works, how the mechanical components inside the engine works, and he should be able to fix it. So, despite being educated, despite being a master's degree holder, he may not be able to fix that bike or a car. On the other hand, if you have a mechanic on side of the road, a garage, if you give your bike or car to him and ask him to fix it, he will probably take 15 minutes to understand what exactly is the problem and maybe will be able to fix it as well. Most of the cases, he will be able to fix it. Question is, does he have the skills to fix it? Yes. Why does he have the skills? Because he has the knowledge of the working of the machine. But is he educated? The answer is maybe, may not be. Majority of cases, not much. Definitely not a master's degree holder in mechanical engineering, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is people who are educated, not necessarily they have the skills. People who have the skills, not necessarily they are educated. What is the differentiating factor between a person who is educated and a person who is skillful? And that is knowledge. When we are studying in a classroom, when we are in academic circumstances or environment, we take this entire aspect of education for granted. We sit there in a classroom to learn something from an exam's perspective. If the lecturer is teaching you something, you pay attention if only there are going to be questions in your final exam from that particular chapter. Otherwise, you will ignore it, right? So we are studying, we are spending time, we are putting our efforts in terms of writing notes, in terms of understanding something from an exam's perspective. Once the exams are over, we forget about it. Now, that is not what knowledge is. Knowledge need not stand the test of an examination. Knowledge is something once you acquire, it remains with you and you keep growing it. I finished my academic education almost 15 years ago. I did not add on to it in terms of education, but in terms of knowledge, every day I am learning something or other, because I need to keep on improving upon my skills. There are people who are very good at typing, right? Imagine if they stopped themselves and they confined or limited themselves to typewriter. What will they do today? Today people do not use typewriter, right? We use computer because you have the ability to edit, delete, print something, you can check and you can keep on printing the same thing. But the same cannot be applied for a typewriter, correct? Imagine a person who is an expert typewriting expert who can type really fast, 40 to 60 words per minute. If he decided that I'm not going to touch a computer or I'm not going to touch a gadget ever in my life, I'll stick with my typewriter, that person will be jobless today because such things do not exist. Imagine a person who is a technician for pagers. I don't know how many of you understand how a pager works. Before cell phones came into existence, there was a device called a pager. You can call the number. For example, if I'm using a pager with a Motorola, I need to have a connection. So I need to call that toll-free number and I need to say this is the number, this is the message, and they will type the message. Basically, it's a one-way communication where you get the text message on the device. You cannot call, you cannot send a message back. You can only receive messages. It's still used in hospitals in certain countries. But imagine if a person who was a technician and an engineer, telecom engineer for pagers, if he did not improve on his skills, he will be jobless today. Skills is something that need to keep up with the time. If you don't keep up with the time, if you don't keep pace with the dynamism of the environment, you will be redundant. Something very simple, if you do something, if you keep doing something, you will remain where you are. You need to keep on improving on your skills. All right. Now let's move on. Today I am going to start with communication essentials, and I am going to talk about a quick learning objective. Now the learning objective, we are going to learn about the overview of communication and communication tree. I will tell you what this means. There are certain aspects which we learnt in school and in college. We are going to understand why it is wrong and why we need to relearn something. We are going to understand the fundamental pillars of communication, and these pillars are pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary and fluency. We're going to look at listening and effective email writing. I'm not very sure if we will have time permitted for this, but we'll try to do as much as possible. All right. Now, part 2 of the learning objective is in terms of body language. We'll talk about making the right impression, leveraging interpersonal skills for success, effective presentation. Now, we certainly won't have time for part 2. In case if the program extends, I'll talk about it. Now, this is going to be a 3-month program. Right now, we have the schedule for 10 days. So, post 10 days, as we progress, I will talk about part 2 as well. Let's move on. So, what do we understand by communication? So, communication simply means transmission of information or exchanging data. For example, a person is talking to another person. It could be a handwritten note, it could be a phone, it could be a text message, it could be any medium. Whenever there is an information passing from one person to another, there is a communication. If I am using a mouse here, I am also using a keyboard here, right? Whatever I am typing on this keyboard, it shows up on the screen, which means the wires of this keyboard, you have the wires, right? The wires of this keyboard basically is transmitting information to the screen, to the PowerPoint. If I am typing something, it shows on the PowerPoint or the screen. There is communication happening there as well, because information is getting sent from one place to another. Communication happens even within your body. If I have to touch a flame of fire, immediately I pull my hand back, because my brain is transmitting data to my skin, to my fingertip, that please take your hand off, otherwise you will get hurt, it's going to burn your skin. So, even here there is some amount of communication happening. So, communication in a nutshell basically means transmission of data, transmission of information. Now, when we talk about communication within the circumference of human beings, it changes because we are talking, we are writing information. Now, a common, the communication cycle, the reason I call it a myth on the PowerPoint is because this is what we were taught in the school. We have a sender and we have a message, the sender sends it to the receiver, correct? So, we have a sender, this is a sender who's sending a message to the receiver. Now, what does the receiver do? The receiver sends a feedback to the sender again. In case if this feedback is happening, we used to call this communication as complete. The communication cycle is complete. Why is it complete? Because there is a sender sending a message to the receiver is sending a feedback, yes, I got your message. For example, the sender is asking, did you have your lunch? Receiver says, yes, I had my lunch. That means the communication is complete. The reason I am calling this a myth is because it's not necessary there will always be a feedback. It's not necessary there is always a feedback. The feedback may or may not exist. What do I mean by that? If you take an example of these three, the first one is a billboard, a hoarding, then you have a newspaper, then you have a television news channel. All these three mediums are giving you information. Imagine you're going out and you see 50% sale in Big Bazaar, you see a big hoarding, you may or may not go to the store, Big Bazaar shop, to buy something. That's your choice. You are reading a newspaper and the newspaper headline says all the shops will be closed tomorrow on the eve of Independence Day. I'm just giving an example. Or breaking news says because of heavy rain, there is a huge traffic problem in the city. You are receiving information from all these three mediums, but are you talking back? Are you sending an information back to the hoarding? Do you talk to the newspaper? Thank you so much. I know all the shops will be closed. Do you talk back to the TV? For example, you're watching television and there is a newsreader is reading something that, say for example, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu has been nominated as a vice president post in India. Do you say, oh, thank you so much, very nice to know, congratulations? Do you speak back to the TV? No. But are you receiving the information? Yes, you are. Tomorrow, if somebody asks you a quiz question, who is the nominee of, name one nominee of vice president post in India from the southern part of the country, you will immediately say Venkaiah Naidu, right? Because you receive the information, it's not necessary you're talking back to the television, which means the feedback is not necessary as a part of communication cycle, but still the communication is complete. That's why I call this a myth. When you look at a receiver sending back information, the feedback is always not necessary. That's why it's a myth. All right. Now let's look at what are the essentials of effective communication. What are the important aspects that you need to know, that you need to have in terms of effective communication. The first one is assertiveness. Second one is authenticity. Third one is open-mindedness. Fourth one is empathy. Fifth one is clarity. And the sixth one is listening skills. All right. I'm going to pause here for 10-15 seconds so that you can make a note of these 6 essentials of effective communication. Please make a note. I'll pause. All right, there was a little disturbance here. All right, so these are the 6 essential elements of effective communication. We have assertiveness, authenticity, open-mindedness, empathy, clarity, and listening skills. Now, let's quickly understand what these mean. All right, the first one says assertiveness. What do we mean by assertiveness? Assertiveness basically means your ability to say no without making the other person offended or other person unhappy. Now, in order to understand assertiveness, you need to understand 2 other behavior. Okay, let me open another PowerPoint. The reason I'm using this because this is much more easier to follow rather than the board. I'm going to increase the font size so that this is clearly visible to all of you. So, we have the first one, which is submissive. Then we have aggressive and the last one assertive, right? Now, what do we mean by these three behavior aspects? Submissive means a person who is not very strong in terms of expressing their feelings. For example, if I ask a submissive person that whatever work you did, it's all wrong, you are not working properly. The fact could be the person is working hard, the person is doing a very good job. But just because I am saying it, the person says, okay, yes, you are right. Submissive means when you submit yourself in front of others without raising your voice, without speaking about your concern. That is submissive, when you try to get dominated by others. The next one is aggressive. Now, what do we mean by aggressive? Aggressive means a person who likes to dominate others, the person who is arrogant most of the times. Now, aggressive is also a very good aspect in certain cases. Now, say for example, something that you will relate to. You have a captain, Indian captain by name Virat Kohli, all right. Then you have a former Indian captain, Rahul Dravid. Between these two people, these two gentlemen, whom do you consider as aggressive person? You will obviously say Virat Kohli. You will not go to say Rahul Dravid. But is Rahul Dravid a bad player, a bad batsman or a bad captain? No. He is a very good player. In fact, a lot of people who regard him very, very high compared to anybody else. That's debatable though. But aggressive here means in a different way. Aggressive here means a person who is willing to take risk. A person who is always in a hurry to achieve something great. A person who doesn't care about what all he will lose, but he focuses on the performance. But aggressive also means a physical aggression as well as mental aggression. Aggressive here means where you tend to dominate people who are little weaker than you. So, a submissive person is opposite to the aggressive person. If I say, if I am an aggressive person, if I say for example, somebody is looking for a little bit of monetary help, the person comes and asks me for money and I'll say, I'm not going to give you any money. I have it, but I'm not going to give it. Please don't ever ask me for money. That's aggressive. Submissive means I have money with me, I have saved it for my lunch, somebody comes and asks and I say, okay, fine, take it, without caring for what I need. Assertive means where I am able to say no to a person without harming that person, without making that person upset or angry. Now, in communication, assertive behavior is very important because it holds on to your ability to say no, it holds on to your ability to convey what you want to say, and more importantly, it builds confidence in a person. That's why it's an essential aspect of communication. Assertiveness, please remember, assertiveness is something you are confident. Assertiveness is something where you're able to say no. Assertiveness is something where you are able to convey your feelings effectively. Second aspect in terms of essentials is authenticity. Authenticity basically means where you are, whatever you are saying, people believe you. Authenticity means something, whatever you say, people find truthfulness in it and it helps you build trust from others. Say for example, if you will have such people in and around you a lot of times where you find authenticity in whatever the person says, right? When politicians come before elections and they say that I am going to build a road, I am going to build a hospital, either you believe it or you don't. You believe it or you believe certain politicians because you know that they will deliver on the promise. That's authenticity. On the other hand, you don't believe certain people no matter how big they are because you know they don't keep their promise, because their actions are not in sync with their delivery. Okay? Or what they say, the promise is not delivered in terms of action. so there is no authenticity in it. So these are the first two essential aspects of effective communication. We're going to take a quick break. We will see you back after 15 minutes. I'm going to talk about the remaining four aspects of the essentials of effective communication. Then I will introduce the four fundamental pillars of effective communication, and I'll tell you why these four fundamental pillars are important and how easy is it to master this. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Take a break and I'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you.